Family member or a loved one murdered in cold blood. You think it could never happen to you, but then it does. Dinah Lenney confronts that reality in her book Bigger Than Life, a tribute to her father, a prominent New Jersey businessman and politician who was killed in a botched robbery attempt. You know her as Nurse Shirley on ER, a character she's played for 13 years. The book chronicles her coming to terms with her father's death and her grief and finding that life does somehow go on. Pleasure to have you back again today, Dinah.
Thanks, Greg. It's nice to be here.
So it was about 10 years ago. You were outside watering the roses, and you got a phone call.
The phone rang, and I let it ring. I let it go, and when I came up, there was a message saying that my dad was missing.
Missing. The call that nobody wants to get.
And yeah, and very strange. You know, you sort of can't quite process that information. You think, what do you mean he's missing? I mean, how does somebody go missing? It never occurs to you that your dad's going to be on a milk carton, you know. Right. Which, of course he wasn't, but it was that kind of thing. So, you know, what do you mean, what's going on? And we haven't seen him since, you know, yesterday was what my uncle told me.
Uh-huh. And at that point, then, so what do you do? I mean, you're outside and you get that kind of a call. Did you drop everything and?
No, you know, I mean, the thing that was really peculiar was that my father was back east. You know, my father lived in New Jersey. I was in Los Angeles, so there really wasn't anything at all I could do. You know, it was the sort of thing where I said to my uncle, should I fly? Should I get on a plane? Well, no, we don't know anything. We're looking for him.
And you've got a family.
Yeah, exactly, and I have a couple of little kids. My kids were 7 and 4 at the time. So, and with no information, I didn't know what I was going back for or for how long, or so it was one of those things where I had to sit tight and wait for more information.
I imagine, you know, you want to do something, but you don't know what to do or what you can do.
Oh, you're completely stymied. You definitely want to do something. I mean, I really did want to get on a plane, but I couldn't. And especially with my dad, there was something so wrong about him being missing. He wasn't the kind of person who was ever going to sort of take off.
Because at first they weren't sure maybe why he was missing?
Well, you know, there were all kinds of the police and the FBI. The FBI was brought in fairly quickly, and immediately there were questions about, do you think your father would want to disappear? Is there any evidence to that fact? Would he have wanted to leave home and never come back? And of course, my father was an incredibly proprietary person and had a real sense of, you know, ownership and space, physical space in the world, and there was no way he was taken off. So there had to be something wrong.
He was successful as a businessman.
He was.
And had the restaurant and real estate and was also in politics. Were there concerns that somehow that...
I think initially, because my father had been a political person, certainly, you know, that was floated, but really it was so mysterious. It was so mysterious. They did have videotape of him in a bank giving, you know, taking out a large sum of money and giving it to people that they couldn't identify.
With other people.
Right.
Okay.
So they did have that piece of information, but they had no idea why. It was truly mysterious.
So how long was he missing?
A week.
He
was missing for a week, which, you know, a week doesn't sound like a very long time. It's just forever when somebody's missing. It's just forever. You know, each day was excruciating, hour by hour. And I think in the book I say that I kept showing up early for appointments because I didn't know what else to do with myself. You know, I couldn't read and I couldn't think, and I, you know, certainly didn't want to get my hair cut. You know, I was really, you know, I kept showing up early to pick up my children, to whatever it was I had to do. I was early.
And when did you get the call, or when did they?
They found him a week. The night before they found him, it was clear that they knew where to look because there had been a confession. So they knew where to look. They found him early in the morning on the 24th of September. He disappeared on the 17th, and he was found early in the morning on the 24th. So I was sleeping when the phone rang about 5 o'clock in the morning, and of course I knew as soon as the phone rang that they'd found him, because otherwise I wouldn't have been getting a call at that hour.
And you kind of knew by that point, felt that it was not...
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't be good. It just, as I say, he wasn't somebody to disappear. My uncles had offered his brothers, he has had 2 brothers. They're alive and well. They had offered a reward for safe return, and nobody came forward, which was, not a good sign. And then they offered a reward for information leading to arrest and conviction, at which point somebody did come forward.
Okay, so the reward helped bring somebody forward.
Yes, as soon as they said arrest and conviction, a street informant said, "Sure, I know what happened."
Wow.
Yeah.
And so then what did the police, who came forward with what? I mean, they found 3 guys, right?
There were three kids,
kids.
Minors. 2 of them were 17, 1 was 18 at the time of the crime. Later, much later, I asked to see the videotaped confessions, and even in the courtroom, when there was a sentencing, even in the courtroom, there was so little affect to their statements. There was so little personal involvement with what they'd done that I think it was disconcerting even for their own attorneys.
Right, because in the courtroom, they had gone through at least the motions of expressing sympathy or remorse,
right? Apology.
But you didn't quite buy it.
Not from 2 of them. The third, who actually, 2 of the boys committed the murder. The third waited for them. He was sort of their getaway car, and he was really agitated. He was really upset, and the story goes that he said to his friends, "Don't do this. What if this man was your father? Don't do it." But it was sort of at that point it was too little, too late. He had, in fact, he was a conspirator. He hadn't come forward. He too spent the money. He too waited. It wasn't as though he didn't rat on his friends until he had to, so.
Right. Well, that's what I think in these cases, is that, what they always say, that they weren't sorry they did it, they were sorry they got caught.
Yeah.
And I wonder how often, and I hope that's not the case, but I think a lot of times that's what it comes down to. They're sorry they got caught, and I wonder how many people.
I think you're right. I think there's another story here. It's not the story I told, but sociologically speaking, there's a generation of disaffected kids who are growing up without, who can't understand why that is so. And we could get into sort of the implications of screen life and television and violence, but yeah, there was very little attachment to what they'd done, very little, real connection to the crime.
And they were 17
at the time, yeah.
17.
17.
And they're all 3.
All 3 of them are in prison.
In prison now. We'll be right back with Dinah Lenney. And we're back with Dinah Lenney, author of Bigger Than Life, a book about a tribute to her father's death and coming to grips with his death. Okay, so, I just wanted to kind of go over what exactly happened. What they later figured out once they had caught the guys was that it turned out to be a former employee. One of them?
Yeah. One of the boys had been a busboy in my father's restaurant. In fact, he'd been fired, is my understanding.
So there may have been a grudge, or
but mostly, a kid growing up in Washington Heights who figured the boss was rich and had plenty to spare. And so they came, in terms of the mechanics of the thing, they came to my father's place of business, knowing his habits, knowing that somebody would be in that office early in the morning, and they came there with a gun. In fact, the gun is, what everybody, sort of how everybody explains my father's behavior. He was compliant because of the gun.
Because there were questions about why he went along.
Why he went along,
try
exactly.
something.
Right. Why didn't he drive the car into the toll booth? Why didn't he make a big noise in the bank? But, this comes down to sort of, issues of temperament. My dad was a very, very powerful man and always in control and never relinquished any of that. And wasn't about to delegate and wasn't about to make a scene.
And is it possible? I don't claim to know, but is it possible too that maybe he didn't think they would do it?
Oh no, I don't think he. I can't believe for a minute he thought that he was in that kind of danger. My big question is always, when did he know? When did he know that there was no way out? And I don't know. I mean, the thing about it is that because the gun wasn't loaded. you know, the whole...
The gun wasn't loaded.
The gun was not loaded.
Not
So because I don't think the boys intended to use the gun. In fact, it really was, you know, it was a robbery, but it was so poorly executed and so poorly thought out that they then realized, well, this guy can, you know, he recognized us. He can nail us.
Now,
so
when the older white guy comes into the bank with two young Hispanic guys,
right,
and I'm not, you know, trying to make stereotypes or anything, and withdraws $20,000 in cash, a large cash withdrawal, with nobody has asked any questions, wonders what's going on.
You know, the whole thing is just so strange. Yeah, because my father was well known in this bank. The bank was the bank across the parking lot from the restaurant. Mm-hmm. So
did he often take large amounts of money out like that?
I don't think so. $20,000? No, I don't think so. My dad had a money clip. You know, he always kept his bills in his money clip, and you know, it wasn't unusual for him to have a few $100s, but. No, I think it was very unusual, highly unusual, to the point where he said to these kids when they said, we're going to take you to New York to get the money. And my father said, I can't get that kind of money in New York. I can only get it here. And even so, they did take him to New York first and then back. And one of the things
and this is what they said later on.
Right. Well, what tipped off the police and brought in the FBI was that he'd crossed state lines twice that morning, you know, with the Easy Pass.
But did anybody ask somebody at the bank? I mean, did they say, why didn't you say something?
No.
Did they have any response to that?
No, I mean, and you can see on that videotape, you could see my father saying to this kid next to him, how do you want it?
Wow.
You know, just astonishing.
Because, you know, read a case, or saw a case on TV lately where you said about crashing into the toll booth. I think the guy actually caused a car accident, like crashed into another car. I mean, it was awful for the other person, but because somebody was in the car seat with him with a gun, and it did save himself. You know, it's almost maybe a September 11th kind of thing where, you know, the people on the plane didn't know, but these days the passengers always intervene when something happens. So,
right. No, I mean, I think what you said before is true. He can't have thought he was in that kind of danger. I think he felt, knowing him, he was probably really annoyed, really frustrated. You know, his day had gone to the dogs, but you know, he figured he was going to get out of it, as he'd gotten out of every other scrape. You know,
yeah, like. Oh.
And I think, and I mean, you know, there's a chapter in the book where I sort of conjecture what he might have been thinking, but. Right. That's the best.
Even when they took him though to the roadside and were leading him down the cliff, which you said was traffic was passing by.
You know,
people
broad daylight.
Right, and I hate to refer to your father as an old guy because I know you refer to that in the
no,
book.
But
honestly, an older gentleman being led down a hill by two young guys.
Right.
Nobody
Nobody
this
stopped.
This is New York, but my God, nobody
stopped. And there's a big sedan, a big silver sedan, and a little brown car parked on the side of the road, and they step over the guardrail and they walk down, and nobody stops, and nobody even notices.
And at that point, although the gun was not loaded, they did have.
They had a pocket knife, and as we understand it from the confessions and I suppose from the evidence, they came up behind him with a rock and hit him in the head, but they killed him with a pocket knife.
And multiple
yes,
stab
many
wounds
stab wounds.